Have you started relic farming? What is the elemental system here? How do I upgrade my traces? Who is a support and who is a DPS? Does my go-to shipper need Jiao? What is the proper rotation for Rise Shower? Is there an endgame boss in this game? Now I'm sure you have probably asked these questions before when you stumble on Umamusume for the first time, and oddly enough, no, I'm not schizo posting. All these questions do have an answer. Hey guys, UmaPokke here, and I think most of you have probably played Uma for the first time in your life, coming from titles like Genshin, Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, and so on and so forth. From personal experience, I genuinely had no idea what this game is about, with the learning curve being the steepest I've ever experienced in any gacha game. Now I did say Hoyoverse for the title, but the concept is pretty much the same throughout the entire mainstream gacha space. You farm relics, you build your teams with traces and signature weapons, you beat bosses with set team, rinse and repeat. Now this has been my experience as early as Counter-Strike back in the days, and Umamusume completely shattered my expectation of playing a gacha game. After soaking in this game for over 200 hours across my phone, PC, and learning guides from different sources, I do want to use this video as a way to bridge the knowledge gap for all of the mechanics within Umamusume. It is pretty simple for me to read everything out as is and explain what the terms mean, but I want to incorporate these terms with you being more familiar with them to make it a lot easier to understand instead of just info dumping. You could say this is my introduction to the series of Uma content for new players to connect the dots as I slowly convert people into Tolenas one step at a time. Do note, I would say don't worry about it quite often because I want to make this as easy and simple as possible, so we will discuss all the in-depth stuff next time. Quick note, thank you guys so much for supporting our channel. We have massive influx of subscribers as well as the viewership for my first ever video. Like I mentioned, I will be doing you guys good, and I have been treating Haru exceptionally well. So if you like this content, smash that like and subscribe button, and we're gonna jump in right now. As per any gacha game, you need to first know exactly what are you trying to do in Umamusume. Honkai style is a turn-based combat as you deal damage while keeping your team alive, not by dodging but with speed tuning and skill point management. Genshin Impact is an open world combat with elemental reaction and burst timings, and Zenless Zone Zero is action-based EX skill and decibel usage while utilizing the anomaly and day system. For Umamusume, you treat every single racetrack as a boss, each having a differing track surface, distance, weather, ground condition, as well as being left or right. Your Umas with the corresponding track and distance will be far more suitable against the specific track. So an excellent example is going to be Haru Urara struggling against Arima Kinan. The game basically made you use Firefly in a boss weak to ice, but extremely strong against fire with pretty much 99% fire damage rest. For Urara to win Arima Kinan, you have to pivot her into an ice Aru Urara instead of a fire Aru Urara, which is basically going to be getting the long distance as well as the turf pacing, and this is not what you would use Urara for in normal circumstances like time trials and champions meet, especially because they are basically polar opposites. But that's what it would take to finally make Urara happy by winning Arima Kinan. Likewise, the resources it would take to build this Urara will be very high, since you need to find the right subsets and main sets to change Urara into an ice DPS via inheritance as well as support cards. So instead of brute forcing your Umas into a race that they are not suitable for, trainers should bring their Umas their own element against these bosses, especially in the early game, such as using Ghost Ship, which is a great DPS into Arima Kinan due to its suitability with long and turf. Now each of these track and distances are essentially the game's elemental system, and being off element like running an Uma with anything below a B in that distance or track is extremely punishing. You can make use of the inheritance to change your Uma's element and build, which is why people say the most meta Uma is the one that you give your attention to, because any Uma can be used to win a race. It just depends on how you train them, and as to how do you do it, don't worry about it for now, just stay on element in the early game. Running style is not that important, especially in career, because it mainly affects your skill proc proficiency, which is why plenty of career runs you can see trainers just slamming the front runner strategy despite having G or F attitude in order to prevent getting boxed in, which is usually a race killer, especially for pace chaser or even the late surgers. It also determines the stamina consumption and speed and acceleration during this final stretch of a race, but again, for now, don't worry about it. Once you are actually in the racetracks, the actual race is full auto, and you cannot pilot your Umas like quick swapping, using skill or basic, or even pressing the ultimate button. In here, you will face your opponent Umas, both of you are running against the same boss, which is going to be the racetrack, and whoever has the better build will generally win. Now do note generally, because each race has its own set of RNG elements like lake start, rush, does your skill even proc, when does it proc, and etc. So not every single race is going to be having the exact same outcome. At this point, it basically boils down to this. Your role as a Torrena is to build your team of Umas that has the best possibility to win against their racetrack, be it the multiple races in their career or individual races in Champions Meet. Team trials is a separate thing which we'll talk about in the next time, but in order to do this, how exactly do you build your Umas will be seen in the next segment over here. As per any gacha game, base stats are the fundamentals before team building, tier lists, meta, rotations, so on and so forth. And by now, I'm sure you roughly know what each of these mean, so here's a comparison. Speed and stamina, they are pretty much the most important stat for any Uma, which can be viewed as the total damage as well as total HP. Now, there isn't a crit ratio or damage formula with like attack down, damage percentage, res down, defense down, but speed is essentially a DPS check for your Uma, and stamina is going to be a HP check. Just like in Honkai Star Rail, Umas cannot dodge or parry attacks in a race, and you can only make sure the HP is sufficient and then run them with some sustained options, being the stamina recovery skills, to make sure your Umas can pass the HP check. In any gacha, Umamusume being no exception, failing a HP check means you basically lost, because in this game, your Uma will basically slow down drastically to the point of going from first place all the way to the last, especially if the race is going to be long enough. This is why stamina is the most important aspect for any Umas, unless you are a sprinter, which honestly doesn't really require that much, because you must hit the HP threshold, the HP check first, before considering anything else. Below is gonna be a nice stamina chart made with the 147-page Uma document. Video is also gonna be coming up very soon. I like to use the green highlights as a generic goal, since page chasers consume the most stamina, and most of the time we should be having super quick swinging Meisho in place for the stamina regeneration. Unless you run a sustainless Uma with no stamina skills and all in HP, then you have to increase your stamina accordingly. Now, regarding downhills which can reduce your stamina usage, stamina debuffs from debuff horses like evil nature, RNG factors like rush, or whether your skill even procs because it's more or less at a 75 to 80% activation, don't worry about it, because Umamusume is a probability game. Your job is to improve the probability to the best of your abilities, especially in the early game when your resources are extremely scarce. The reason why you're passing your career runs with Ghost Ship or any medium and long Umas despite having 500 stamina is because career mode has a 400 stat bump to all stats. That being said, once you have enough stamina, then every single additional stamina is effectively worthless, since you already passed the HP check, though that's where debuff builds comes in, but for now, don't worry about it. Passing the HP check, your goal now is to increase your damage to hit the DPS check, and that's where speed comes in. Now, there's no such thing as too much speed, like too much attack damage, crit damage, because it can be simply seen as your Uma's final damage against the boss, or the fastest timing you can hit against the racetrack. For now, 1200 speed is the max, but you can go beyond this limit using skills, and in the future, when U-grade comes, this will go even higher. Assuming all the scenarios are constant, speed will be the determining factor as to who beat the boss faster, your Uma or their Uma. The DPS or speed check here is not specifically against the racetrack or the boss, but rather against the enemy Umas, because whoever clears faster naturally will win the race. Again, there are different RNG factors in the race itself, like corners, straight, skill procs, positioning, but don't worry about it. Before caring about skills and everything else, first ensure that you have the stamina for the set race, then slam all in speed. Now, for power, guts, and wits, these are all far inferior in terms of importance compared to stamina and speed, but they are good to have once you can first maintain the baseline for stamina and speed. Currently, most of us have a lack of access to proper inheritance and support, so players slamming all in wits while having 200 stamina or having 1000 power or only 200 speed is a big no-no. Once our accounts improve either with inheritance, dex, or the scenario changes, then they become increasingly important, notably guts and wits in future scenarios. So for power, this is gonna be your acceleration, or how fast can you hit your top speed. So the more power you have, the longer you will be in top speed. On top of that, it also helps with the uphills and changing lanes, which is how it reduces the chance of you getting blocked. You can treat this somewhat like a crit chance to a certain extent, which basically smooths out your damage output. Guts is basically stamina 2.0, except there is a small guts check in each race, but far lesser than stamina checks. Usually 300 is gonna be fine, and you get plenty of random stats from playing the game naturally. We will get a guts update in the future when it's gonna be much more useful next time. Which actually does quite a few things, but it's to mainly increase the probability of triggering your skills, but it also helps with reducing the chance of the rush debuff as well as the downhill speed boost. Consider this as your mana, your decibels, or your energy, but you don't really need a high wit to proc any skills. So even if your Uma is completely dented at 200 wit, they can still have a 55% proc chance. Likewise, an Uma going to Harvard with 1200 wit doesn't guarantee a 100% proc chance. A good number for wit is roughly 350 to 400 before diminishing returns, but keep in mind this is for a single skill. So the more skills you own in your Uma, the higher the importance is gonna be your wit, which is why debuff builds like Evil Nature, you can often see them running 800, 900, even 1000 wit because you have a lot of different skills in order to trigger in the race. To combine everything for base stats, picture this scenario. You are using the exact same team of Akron, Jiaoqiu, Cypher, and Gallagher with 15 other opponents, and everyone is up against True Sting playing on full auto. There are some cases where the mobs hit a unit more to get more energy, sometimes you miss your crit, sometimes Cypher wastes an ultimate on a 1% enemy, sometimes Gallagher don't trigger his ultimate in time, and there are a multitude of things that can happen, so your job is to give these units the best possible build before sending them into the endgame content in Memory of Chaos or whatever it's gonna be. Make sure that everyone has enough HP to survive the boss damage, and then it boils down to who can kill the boss in the least number of cycles or action value, which will determine the winner for the race. I did mention teams as well as builds, but in Umamusume, isn't it just your one horse against every other horse? And that is where the next two segment comes in. Warning, warning, warning. This is the biggest learning curve in Umamusume. I've tried to condense everything in this segment, so do lock in at least for this particular portion. For every single Uma, they can be built differently from scratch, unlike in normal gachas where once you build a unit, their levels, weapons, and skills are locked in forever. In Umamusume, every time you do a career, it's essentially you building a brand new Uma with the different relics, signature weapons, as well as team comps. In theory, your single Uma can be every single element across Genshin Impact, HSR, and Xenosaga Zone Zero as long as you can modify them via their builds. I will go through the team comps at the end, but this will be the first step in raising your Uma after understanding the basics just now. Enter the inheritance system. Now this deserves a whole video by itself because it's one of the most complicated systems in the game and yet one of the most important. In short, inheritance is the relics you will give your Umas, and each inheritance can be built with your support cards, which is gonna be the team building segment. Umamusume, just like any gacha title, has a farming cycle to improve the build of your units, either with relic quality, signature weapon, or better teammates, but in an entirely different method. Your inheritance you gain with the respective blue, pink, and white sparks can all be seen as relic substats and main stats, and they not only improve your base stats but entirely change your Uma's elements. For the blue sparks, those will be your main stats, which will directly improve your baseline for any of the 5 stats we've discussed just now. Pink sparks are mainly for tracks, since pacing strategy is less important and it is to change your Uma's element. So if you want your Haru Urara to get the long element, then getting her long pink sparks will be necessary. So taking an example of my Taiki Shadow over here, I equip her with a stat bonus of a total of 84 stamina, 21 power, and 21 wit, while improving her elemental disadvantage of medium E to A, allowing her to race in almost every single race in her career to do an excellent spark run of hitting 600 across 4 stats while having 2000 over skill points to allocate into my skills. This is like me slapping on my 6-piece relics in Honkai style and equipping the right stats to secure her baseline damage output and HP while utilizing the Uma's unique elemental change system to pivot my Taiki Shadow as a triple element Uma in sprint, Mao, and medium. Now there's so much depth as to how to utilize the right pin sparks and the right blue sparks for the right Umas, like why stamina and power is better currently and why veterans are currently hunting for medium sparks to prepare for the upcoming Champions Meet. As long as you see the inheritance system this current way that I described it, it should greatly improve your understanding of Umamusume. I can literally talk about this topic for hours because of how deep this is, but like I mentioned, I'll keep everything in this video as simple as possible. For white and green sparks, they are less important than these two from a beginner's perspective, so don't worry about it for now. Just look out for the URA Finale spark, which is a free 10 to 30 speed and stamina boost, and doing G1 race for your grandparents and parents to improve compatibility and get corresponding white sparks. Okay, never, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. For now, new players should focus on first building a baseline Uma that can at least clear URA scenarios consistently every single time, and then slowly start to spark hunt, which is going to be improving your stats while clearing as many raids as possible to add more skills as well as to build compatibility for your generations of Uma in the same lineage. Bonus: Find friends, find friends, find friends. Having a good friend Uma and support card is a godsend and not negotiable. You can't ignore the friend system in almost every other gacha game, but in Umamusume it is literally built into the game to steal, to borrow your whale's friends' parents' Umas as well as max limit break support cards, or you will be playing at a massive disadvantage. This is as if you can borrow your whale friends 2 or 3 pieces of relics like F45 crit value, 12 speed, or the S5 signature weapon, which you can in turn build into your own Umas and use them in every single endgame content. For now, it is unlimited support cards and 3 times a day for parents Umas, but this will be updated to 5 times a day in the future. I personally have a max limit rate Kira-san Black with a few 9 spark Umas, currently on a 3-star power Biwa. Not the best Uma since I didn't give it the proper white sparks yet, but she's my only natural 3-star power which you can use for your own. For other cards like MLB, Super Creek, Fine Motion, or anything in between, please use this website and find the support cards and parent Umas to use. Again, this is non-negotiable for any players, casual or whale, because the game literally allows you to use the whale's resources, so just use it for free 99. With that, we have come to the last segment of the gameplay loop before discussing more in-depth stuff in future videos, and that is team building. Yes, even in Umamusume, team building is crucial in building a good Uma, and this is basically your support cards. You can treat them as individual light cones or signature weapons, except you can equip 6 of them from a single Uma. Again, borrow a whale max limit break support card, please, for the love of God, right? The thing with team building Uma is that your support cards are not going to be seen directly in an actual race, but rather the preparation before the race as they train together with your main Uma. They run together, swim together, study together, and sometimes they give rainbow bonuses, and other times they fail at 3% success rate. Support cards are also extremely important because you wouldn't run a solo Acheron run for any of the endgame content. In Genshin, Xenon Zone Zero, and Warring Waves, solo runs are definitely possible, but as mentioned, you cannot dodge nor parry in Umamusume, so every single stat and skill in the preparation phase matters. It is not about the actual race itself, but everything before the race. The way that support cards work with team building is it comes with their own passive in support effects as well as active in skills and career events. All of their passive will work permanently once equipped in the career, and some passive are more important than others, like friendship bonus, mood effect, race bonus, and so on, and likewise for the active with some skills having more importance than others. Sometimes you can run a support card exclusively for their passives despite having bad skills, and other times, especially later on, you can run them exclusively for their broken active skill but worse passives. So for example, skill chaining is a practice that endgame Umas will have, especially in PvP, where they will chain a skill proc based on their position. For example, slipstream when they are behind an Uma, ramp up to increase speed during overtaking, and playtime is over when an Uma is behind them. Tail Hell High is gonna then proc because 3 skills were activated, and these skill activation will exceed the stat cap, which is why endgame is where skills matter a lot more than base stats, assuming everyone already hit the same base stats. For now, don't worry about it, but just know that you want to first build the base of having the right teammates as per denoted by the 5 different stat categories. Speed cards are basically the amplifiers and supports of the game, and you can use them to deal more damage, i.e. get more speed at a faster pace, and they will be integral to any Uma in the game. This is why I say Kira-san Black is basically E6 Trippy. You will literally run her every single team because every single Uma in the game will definitely want at least 1 speed card, and she will buff your damage like no tomorrow. Stamina cards are like your sustains, and they will improve your stamina and sometimes drop bonus health skills like the greatest of all time swinging Maestro from Super Quick. You can run sustainless runs for shorter battles like sprints, but for almost every longer fights, especially medium and long, you definitely want anywhere between 1 to 3 stamina cards. Super Quick is basically like the highest seen, best and most covered sustain because of her passive as well as the active skill. Power cards are like sub DPS, where they increase your acceleration to hit top speed faster and indirectly improves sustain because power training can give you some stamina in return. For now, we unfortunately don't really have a very good power card aside from a high limit break vodka, and in the early game we're so starved on speed and stamina that we almost never run a power card. It's like having a Gui Naifen as your sub DPS for now is not worth it. Guards cards are like a mix of everything, and for now you don't have to worry about it. Haru Urara, which is free from the friendship shop, and Ines Fujin are 2 notable ones, but most players just starting out should completely ignore them. Wit cards are basically your battery supports. They are designed to give you free stats because wit training does not consume and in fact replenishes your stamina, while hitting wit goals will improve your skill proc frequency. The more skills you own, the higher your wit should be, as I mentioned just now, and fine motion is gonna be the Sunday and T-Win all-in-one, incredible passive and active skills with additional energy recovery. Bonus, the Friendship card, which is gonna be a support card for all of your support cards. Basically a global passive for your support cards. It will help you reduce your energy consumption during careers, meaning you take less rests and get more turns actually training. The upgraded rest is much better because you are guaranteed a good energy and mood recovery without worrying about poor sleep, and you can also use this to heal yourself from infirmary conditions. This is especially useful if you have moody horses like Rice Shower and Mayano Top Gun. You will never see the effects shown on the actual race itself because they have no skills and no stats, but rather amplify the support cards you currently own because you technically can do way more training with the current deck you have. With this in mind, team building, or rather deck building in Umamusume is currently mostly revolving around the two main builds, Speed Stamina or Speed Wit, with the former being for most Umas outside of Sprint. This will be basically 3 to 4 speed cards with 2 to 3 stamina cards or wit cards, and then you may be adding 1 friendship card depending on the deck and the Uma itself. This template should be more than enough to clear the URA finale for pretty much any Uma as long as you follow the template. We can also have another massive discussion about what support cards to use and the SR and SSR tier list and all that, but then again, for now, don't worry about it. So this is gonna be the example of 2 sample decks I can use for myself. With, I'll borrow a max limit rate Fine Motion, and Stamina, I will then borrow a max limit rate Super Quick. If you do not have a max limit rate Kira-san Black, do consider borrowing that and then getting yourself the respective cards to fill out the gaps. Congratulations! If you understood and were able to apply everything I said just now, you're pretty much more knowledgeable than 90% of the global player base. Again, I simplified everything as much as I could so that Umamusume can be understood and enjoyed by everyone. In-depth stuff and in-depth content will come with time, but for now, you must be wondering, okay, so what exactly is the goal I'm doing in Umamusume? Before you go running off to PvP in team trials and an upcoming champions meet, career will be 90% of your gameplay, so getting your career down is absolutely crucial for every single Uma you're going to be raising throughout your entire time in this game, because you're simultaneously farming for relics via the inheritance spark farming, improving your final build via obtaining the right skills, the right support cards for different scenarios, and generally enjoying how Umamusume is like within the game itself, seeing how each Uma has a unique career progression down to the very race they participate, which is tied to their real life racing events and anime. No one really cares about making the right choices at the start of any gacha game, and it's all about soaking in what the game is about, enjoying it, and over time the process will work itself out. As I end off this video, this is perhaps the most important aspect of them all. I deem it as a honeymoon period just like any new launch gacha game, except we have an overload of information from the JP and Taiwan server players that pretty much have everything unlocked and explained. I really cannot stress enough on the don't worry about it part, because for myself, there were so many things to unpack that if I didn't have enough interest from watching the anime and getting the gist of reading hundreds of pages of documents and hours of guides from the CN content, I don't think I would have stuck with Umamusume, because there's just so much information. I would just feel, why the hell do I even bother? Take it one step at a time, and you don't have to be efficient, you don't have to play, you don't even have to stress about every single career run. All you need is Kira-san Black. All you need is to enjoy the process, and eventually everything will fall into place. From failing your career runs to getting 320k fans and spark farming like a muscle memory. With that, we have come to the end of today's content. Do let me know what you guys think, and once again, thank you guys so much for supporting my brand new channel in UmaPokke. A lot more content will be coming in the future, but first of all, let me know what you guys want to talk about a little bit more first. I'm thinking between the inheritance guide or the SR or support tier list stuff. We're also going to be having a champions meet very soon, so just leave your thoughts down below, and any sort of questions, join our Discord for more available resources. We have a lot of Umamusume community, so all your questions there more or less can be answered as well. With that, all the best for your gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time.